I don't know, guys. I just don't know about this one. I want to love it, and I do, at least at times, but after playing it again, I just feel, I don't know, abused. Seriously, this game keeps on pummeling me with vicious, brutal, and unforgiving mental punches, and yet I still kinda like it. I think. I honestly can't seem to decide either way here, so without any further ado, I bring you Stuntman.
Supercalifragilistic, when we drop, you go ballistic.
Oh, why must this game be such a tease? I'm not kidding. As much as I may or may not adore this game, it also has an uncanny ability to frustrate and annoy the living hell out of me. As its name suggests, this fairly unique little title actually puts you in the position of a film stuntman and tasks you with the job of performing all sorts of motorized maneuvers from the extremely simple to the unbelievably difficult. The concept itself was enough to get me interested, and although there is quite a bit of enjoyment to be found here, there are also a fair amount of problems, some of which are pretty big. Does that make this game terrible, or are the good parts good enough to make it brilliant? I already told you, I don't know, but I'll try my best to find out. Let's put on our helmets, tighten our safety harnesses, and jump right into the death-defying world of Stuntman. On the face of it, this is actually a somewhat simple and basic game. I mean, it doesn't have a story mode or anything, and there's not really all that much variety or a load of modes to choose from. All you really get is the so-called career mode. Well, okay, you do also get the stunt constructor, where you can use the various toys you unlock in the career mode to build and try out your own stunts, and there are also the so-called driving games, but the only mode that really matters is the career mode. This isn't really a problem though. Loads of games only have one or two modes and they still manage to impress, so this one certainly can as well. Unfortunately, in this case, it just gets a bit too repetitive. Yeah, this really is a bit of a one-note game. True, it's a pretty good note and it may modulate it a bit once in a while, but it still falls pretty short of a full bar. I mean, where's the Jägermeister? What? Seriously though, most of this game is spent doing pretty much the same thing again and again and again, and eventually you may actually end up doing the exact same thing over and over, as some of these stunts are damn near impossible. Let me just explain the so-called career mode a bit more before we get into that though. You see, in lieu of a story mode or a racing championship or something, this game offers you the opportunity to play through the career of a stuntman. You start off doing relatively small stunts for a fairly low-budget film, and move on to bigger and more expensive films and stunts as you progress. These films actually kind of exist as well. Okay, so they're obviously fake, but they are very clear spoofs and or homages to real-life films, like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Dukes of Hazzard, and Indiana Jones. Although this is somewhat unnecessary and a bit silly, I do like the fact that they actually put a fair amount of thought and effort into this. You see, between each stunt, you get these little interview sequences with this guy who I assume is supposed to be the stuntman you're controlling. He explains just about everything about the world of stunts and how they work, but he occasionally also gives us a bit of insight into the story of the film you're working on.
This movie's about bootleggers, moonshine, the county sheriff, and the innocent Basco boys. This is the part where Hanus's moonshine is in the drains and starts exploding all over town.
You also get to see a trailer for the film once you finish all the stunt sequences for it. As these trailers also use footage from the stunts you just did, how good they end up looking kinda depends a bit on your performance as well, so overall, this is a very neat little addition. That said, it can be a little annoying and somewhat unrewarding spending up to an hour or more on getting these stunts just right, when only a few seconds of that hard work actually makes it into these relatively short trailers anyway. Yeah, you do have the option to watch and or save a full replay of each stunt as well, but still, it doesn't really feel quite worth the effort. This film and trailer stuff is pretty much just set dressing though. What really matters are the actual stunts. Each film has a series of stunt sequences containing several smaller stunts that you have to complete as flawlessly as possible within a certain time limit. You can make a few mistakes, but fuck up too much, and you have to start the entire sequence all over again from the beginning. Which, as you may have guessed, never causes any frustration or anger whatsoever. None at all! Yeah, this is what I was getting at before. Even though these stunt sequences are usually relatively short, only taking a couple of minutes or less to complete if you do them right, they are still some of the most frustrating challenges you'll ever encounter. To begin with, as there is no way to do any sort of practice run, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that you'll fail almost every scene at least once. After all, you can't possibly know what's coming the first time playing, so unless you're really good, fairly lucky, or just plain psychic, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail. This would be bad enough if you could just do part of the scene over again or if minor mistakes didn't really matter, but no. Every single mistake, no matter how minor or insignificant, will cost you, and sometimes just getting a bit too close to a car or missing a certain box or something could be enough to render the entire scene a bust. I'm so not kidding. You could be having a near perfect run, but since you drove through a gap a bit awkwardly or slightly mistimed an explosion or something, you have to do the entire thing over again, at which point you'll more than likely end up making some other mistake, forcing you to do it all yet again. Fine, in the first few films you do have a little bit more leeway, but you still have to have a pretty high accuracy rate. Honestly, I don't think you can ever miss more than 2, 3, maybe 4 stunts and still get a pass. Hell, I'm almost positive that you eventually can't get more than 1 mistake and still make it, as you'll need about 90 to 95% in the later films. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Challenge is okay, but demanding all but perfection from your players is never, ever a good thing. All that does is create annoyance, frustration, and head-popping controller-snapping rage. Seriously, there is no good reason for any game to pull this bullshit. You can make a game challenging yet surmountable. You don't have to make it near impossible for it to be rewarding. I guess that is what they're trying to do here though, make it more rewarding to complete a sequence, but it doesn't really work. I for one certainly don't feel a sense of accomplishment after completing a particularly arduous scene, I just feel exhausted. It doesn't fill me with joy or excitement, it just makes me relieved and thankful that I don't have to do it again. Exactly what is it you have to do though? I mean, I haven't exactly gone over all the details yet, have I? Well, there isn't really all that much to tell, as I think most of it is kinda self-explanatory, but I'll try to give a few more details. Like I said, the objective here is to perform a series of stunts as flawlessly as possible, and these stunts can be pretty much anything. Sometimes you have to get close to a timed explosion, sometimes you have to get close to an overtaken other vehicle, and sometimes you have to
do a barrel roll.
All of these different stunts add to your overall completion or accuracy rate, and while there usually are 1 or 2 bigger stunts that are worth a bit more than the rest, they all make a big enough difference that you don't really want to fail any of them. There are also things that will cause an immediate failure. For instance, if you go the wrong way, fall off a ledge, or completely destroy the car, the director will yell cut and you'll have to do it all again. This is fair enough, I guess, but then there are times when you make a mistake so bad that you've obviously failed the scene anyway, and yet you're still allowed to keep going. What? Why? Seriously, I just completely screwed up the shot and nearly destroyed the car, and yet you want me to keep going just so you can give me a big fat failure status at the end anyway? Yeah, I have a better idea. How about you go fuck yourself? I just don't get this. Why would you immediately halt the run for certain kinds of failures, but still let me continue when I clearly have no chance of successfully completing the scene anyway? There are so many times when you might as well just restart the entire run because you've obviously failed, so why the game doesn't just stop me right away, I'll never understand. It's also pretty ridiculous that just one of the usually many stunts within a scene can cause an immediate failure. No, I don't just mean because you need a high accuracy rate, although that definitely doesn't help. I'm talking about the fact that certain stunts are worth so much that they may as well be the only stunt you have to do. Sure, this is somewhat understandable at times, considering several of the scenes are just building up to one big scene stealer. That said, there are plenty of times when a somewhat smaller stunt is what's going to cost you the most. Hell, in the later scenes, something as simple as a slightly mistimed explosion could be enough to fail the entire thing. Even when it is the showstopper that will make or break the scene though, it's still pretty annoying. I mean, here you've been struggling your way through a series of some usually fairly tricky stunts just to be able to get to this bigger one in the first place, and then it turns out that all of that hard work and all the times you failed didn't really matter, as this is the only stunt worth a damn. Some of the stunts are also set up in the most ludicrous ways. Sure, you can take a few liberties and ask us to suspend our disbelief a little bit even in a game like this, but I'm sorry, some of this just doesn't make any sense. First of all, I'm not so sure that they would film these sort of stunts in quite this way. Yeah, I can see them filming a chase scene in one go using several camera teams in different locations, but would they really do the same with a scene containing multiple dangerous and difficult to set up stunts that each need to be filmed from a specific angle anyway? Wouldn't they just do those one at a time? Secondly, I'm pretty damn certain that they at the very least would never ever let a stuntman fire an actual missile from an armored fucking truck. I'm so not kidding here. There's a scene in this game where you have to aim and fire a fucking missile into a pillar in order to bring it down and use it as a platform. Oh, definitely. I totally buy that. I'm sure that sort of thing is done in film production all the fucking time. They certainly wouldn't just use some sort of remote control detonation or something. No, that'd just be silly. The most obvious and definitely safest option is just to let a stuntman fire an actual missile through a crowd of people at a pillar of stone. How could that possibly go wrong? And before you ask, no, this is not just me misunderstanding the situation or whatever. The director clearly tells you to aim and fire, and it's more than possible to miss and hit a wall or something instead. Fair enough, I'm not exactly an expert, but somehow I just doubt that they would be allowed to do something this monumentally insane for a fucking film. Okay, so maybe I'm thinking a bit too much about this. After all, this is still a game, so it should be allowed to take a few liberties as far as realism is concerned, but that's the thing. It seems to want it both ways. On the one hand, it's definitely aiming for a more realistic feel with everything working pretty much as it would in real life, but on the other hand, it sometimes sacrifices quite a bit of that same realism to try and make a slightly more entertaining game. I don't really have a problem with either solution, but when you muddle them up like this, the game just ends up feeling kinda uneven. Take the stunt arena segments, for example. These appear between each film and are pretty much what they sound like, a stadium event of some kind. For the most part, these feel relatively true to life and work as they should, but then there are some that just don't add up. Like, take the one where you're driving a monster truck around in a circle, trying to crush as many cars as possible along the way. In and of itself, there's nothing all that wrong with this, but I do have one question. Why the hell is there a time limit? Seriously, how does this make any sense? Okay, so this time limit is technically a bit of an issue with all of these arena stunts, but this is the one where it's truly problematic. Not only is it stingy as fuck, not only do you still fail even if you make it across the checkpoint at the exact moment the time runs out, but it's also the only obstacle in this entire stunt. No, really, the only reason I can think of for having a time limit in this event is so there's some challenge making it more gaming friendly. Again, I'm no expert, but these type of events don't really work like this in real life, do they? Would they really just stop the event cold if the driver failed to make it to some imaginary checkpoint within a given time? I just don't think so. See what I mean? Uneven. All of this considered, most of you are probably thinking that I absolutely hate this game, but you know what? I still think it's pretty damn good. Sure, there are quite a few issues here, and it can be a seriously frustrating and unforgiving experience, but come on. You can't really hate a driving game that allows you to do a nitrous jump over a massive canyon, use a minivan to take out a cable car, and an armored truck to blow up a submarine. Yeah, there are quite a few spectacularly awesome moments in this game, and when and if you manage to pull them off perfectly, it feels pretty fucking sweet. Oh, it can be hair-pullingly, TV-smashingly difficult to do so, and it certainly doesn't always feel worth the effort, but like I said, it still feels pretty sweet to do a tricky stunt just right. Now, it is a pretty repetitive game, and far from everything makes complete sense. The controls can also be rather wonky and unruly at times, but they're more than acceptable, and it does make each vehicle feel relatively unique and different. Most importantly though, this game is just a blast to play. There's still nothing else out there quite like this, apart from the sequel that I may take a look at some other time, and as frustrating and punishingly difficult as it may be at times, it still leaves you wanting more. If you're interested in driving games but you're looking for something a bit different, then this is the game to check out. No, it's not for everyone, as you have to have a certain amount of patience with it, and even then you may struggle with it quite a bit, but when it all comes together and you get to watch that awesome replay, you'll have a memory for life. Ultimately, I'd say it's at least worth a try, but whether or not you should buy it depends a bit more on your personal preferences. If you can, lend it from a friend or something, or if you find it cheap enough, just take the risk. I'm fairly certain you won't be too disappointed. Oh, excuse me for a second. Hello?
This is Snake. Do you read me?
Snake? You're back?
Kept you waiting, huh?